This is video help for the Geometry Chapter 11 homework number 0 mixed review assignment that will count as extra credit for the 2020 school spring semester. And I'm just going to pick a few problems to help you remember how to do each type of problem in the section. So let's start with number 1. And I'm looking at this triangle and I'm going to use trigonometry, which is SOHCAHTOA, or sine, cosine, and tangent, to solve and find the value of x. And in this case, I have this angle is 21 degrees, and this side is the adjacent side, the adjacent leg, and this side is the hypotenuse. And if I'm picking from my trig functions, then I know that since I have the adjacent and the hypotenuse, I'm going to use cosine. So I'm going to say that the cosine of 21 degrees is equal to x over 12. And then I'll use a calculator to find the cosine of 21 degrees. And, sorry, pressing a whole bunch of buttons unnecessarily. Cosine of 21 is equal to 0.9336. So you can write down that number, or you could just keep it on your calculator. 0.9336 equals x over 12. And so x equals 12 multiplied by 0.9336. So I'm just going to keep this on my calculator here and then just say multiply that by 12. And I get 11.20. All right, and then if you were doing, say, problem number 3, that one I'm looking for the value of the angle, and in this case the x is in the angle, so I'm looking for how many degrees that is, and I have the side opposite and the side adjacent. This is the hypotenuse, which doesn't have a number on it, so the opposite leg and the adjacent leg, which means that I need the tangent function. So then I can say that the tangent of x is equal to the side opposite, which is 15, over the side adjacent, which is 8. And then to solve for x, I'll use the inverse tangent. And just type that into the calculator. The inverse tangent of 15 divided by 8 is 61.9 degrees. I like to round to 1 decimal for angles and 2 decimals for side lengths. And one thing to watch out for on the calculator is to make sure that you are in degree mode. On this calculator, the mode key is here, and the angle needs to be measured in degrees. A quick check to make sure that you are in the right mode is if you press the sine of 30 degrees, you should get 0.5 or 1/2. And if you're in the wrong mode and you press the sine of 30 degrees, you won't get 1/2. So if you get this number, then you're in what's called radian mode, and you need to figure out how to change it to degree mode. Go back to degree mode. And the way that they're changed varies a lot depending on what calculator you have, so you just got to watch out for that. Skipping down to number 5, a ladder is leaning against a house and it forms a 67-degree angle with the ground. So if I say that this is my house a ladder is leaning against it and forms a 67-degree angle with the house. If the bottom of the ladder is 4 feet from the house, how long is the ladder? So that's the picture that I would want, and it looks like I have the adjacent and I need the hypotenuse, and so I would use the cosine function. I'm going to leave that to you to figure that one out. It's very similar to number 1. All right, moving on to the next group. That is 30, 60, 90 and 45, 45, 90 triangles. And here's a quick review of them. If it's a 45, 45, 90, then the legs are x, and the hypotenuse is x root 2. And if it's a 30, 60, 90, then the shortest side is x, the hypotenuse is 2 times that value, x, and the long leg is x times root 3. So we'll use this information to find the missing side lengths on these triangles. So when we did this in class, so it was a couple months ago, but we would have these to look at, and would mark on each one, say this is x, x, and x root 2. And this is the easy case, because if you already know that x is 4, then this side is 4, and this side is just 4 root 2. The 4 gets substituted into the x. And you can look down here to find your answer. Also on number 1, there was that answer, and number 3, 61.9 degrees is also right here. Remember, I get these right most of the time, but occasionally I could have an error, so feel free to email me if you feel like I've gotten it, if I have a mistake on these jumbled answers. So if you were doing number 7, then you would put in your x here, the hypotenuse is 2x, and the long leg is x root 3. So then this side, if x is 6, then this side would be 12, and this side would be 6 root 3. Let's do one that ends up being a little bit trickier. Actually, I think these ones are all fairly straightforward. Yeah, I'm going to leave them to you to figure out, but I'll post solutions to this assignment soon. So question 10 says to find the slope of line A, and there you would just use the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 for these points. Find the equation of line A, you would use this formula. And if line A is perpendicular to line B, find the equation of line B. So I'm going to use the same formula, but remember that the perpendicular slope is the opposite sine and reciprocal. So once you figure out the slope of whatever line A is that you do in part A, to get the slope of the line in part C, you'll take the opposite, change the sign on it. This one is positive, so the slope of the perpendicular line will be negative, and it will be the reciprocal. So if you get, say, 2 over 3, then this would be 3 over 2, and negative. All right, so I'm going to let you try to figure that out. This is solve the system. It is definitely set up to use substitution. So you can take what y is equal to and substitute it in for the y, and then you'll get an equation that only has x's in it. And then you can distribute and combine like terms, and when you solve this you'll get the x value of the point of intersection, and then once you know the x value you can substitute it back into either one to find the y value of the point of intersection. And then if you wanted to check your answer, substitute it into the other equation that you didn't use and see if you get it right. Or you could graph these both on Desmos and see if they come out to have the same point of intersection. Okay, moving on to number 12. Graph the lines, y equals 3x minus 2, y equals negative 1/2 x plus 4, x equals negative 3. So let's go ahead and just review the first one. Y equals 3x minus 2 would cross the y-axis at negative 2 and then go up 3 over 1 and down 3 over 1. And I like to just put as many points as I can fit on the graph. And I'm having trouble finding a straight edge, but this will work well enough. On question E, just change it to y equals form. Question C, x equals negative 3 is a vertical line that goes through, a vertical line that goes through negative 3, so it'll be over here. Y equals 8 is a horizontal line. Here you could graph the point 3, negative 8, and then put on a slope of 2/3, or you could distribute and get it into y equals mx plus b to get that. This problem is a good challenge problem. I'll leave that for you to figure out, but it'll be helpful if you find the slope of this line first, and then you know if they're perpendicular that the slopes are opposite reciprocals. Moving on, here you're being asked to factor these and there isn't really enough space. So you would want to have a piece of scratch paper handy. And in this case, I would do a diamond with 25x squared on the top and 10x on the bottom. And if at this point you know what it factors to, you can just fill it in. But if you're unsure, then go through and show the steps. Taking out the greatest common factor here. What did I mess up? Oh, this is supposed to be a 25. So 5, and then this will be a 5. And so the factors are x plus 5 and x plus 5. And you could have written that x plus 5 squared. If you prefer, that would be fine. So going through these, this one would come out if you showed all the steps to x minus 5 squared. And this is the special case where you have 0 x's and it ends up being x plus 5, x minus 5. And you could show out the steps on that with a diamond with negative 25x squared and 0 x's and go through the steps for that. These two are just a greatest common factor, so I can take out a 5 and it would just be the distributive property that gets me between those two. And this one, there's an x in both of them. And now the reason that I wanted all of these written here is because it will help you do these problems. 19 was already filled in for you, but you can see that if you factored x squared plus 10x plus 25, you would get x plus 5 and x plus 5. And 5x plus 25 factors to 5 times x plus 5. And then any factors that are the same on the top and the bottom can cancel out. And so the final answer to this is x plus 5 over 5. Now these two do not cancel because this 5 is a term in the numerator, not a factor. So the only way that this could cancel is if the whole x plus 5 was in the denominator, not just the 5. All right, so let's try one more. And x squared minus 10x plus 25 is x minus 5x minus 5. And x squared minus 25 is x plus 5, x minus 5. And the x minus 5s are the same on the top and the bottom, and so they can cancel. And my final answer is x minus 5 over x plus 5. I'll leave the rest of those for you to check, and I will post answers so you can know if you got them right. Here, I would just simplify each expression. Negative 1/2 squared means negative 1/2 times negative 1/2. So negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. Square root of 5 squared is the square root of 25 over 4. And so this is 1/4, because 2 squared is 4. And then root 25 is just 5. And so I get 1/4 plus 5/4 is 6/4, which 6/4 simplifies to 3/2. On number 25, remember you can think of that as over 1. And so this will be 3 root 2 over 5 plus 7 root 2 over 5, which will be 10 root 2 over 5. And then this 10 and 5 can simplify. 5 goes into 10 twice, so it'll be 2 root 2. And that answer is down there. 3/2 is also down there. Let's do one more, and then you'll be on your own to figure these out. 5 root 18. I can split the 18 into 9 times 2, and split the 8 into 4 times 2. The square root of 9 is 3, and that 3 will multiply the 5. The square root of 4 is 2, and those came from this 9 turned into that 3, and this 4 turned into that 2 when I square rooted them. And so this will be 15 root 2 minus 4 root 2, which is 11 root 2. All right, so good luck on this homework. Thanks for putting the effort into a little algebra and mixed review. Please come to the Zoom meetings for extra help.